in the very beginning, God spoke the world into existence. And it also says we were made in his image. So if I believe that, then it makes sense that my words also have a similar power and are able to create things in front of me. What's up, y'all? Welcome to the 27th episode of the Resolution Podcast, where we help artists gain clarity on their calling. Actually, more specifically, where we help rappers gain clarity on their calling. I'm your host with the most, Alex Lacey. And this week is going to be a little bit different. I just wanted to speak on just kind of the state of hip-hop at large and the impact that artists have with their lyrics, because I really don't think a lot of people think about how important what you write is and how it impacts the culture around you. Just a little bit of background about me. I was raised in a very small town in Utah, about 5,000 people, I think at this point. And I was raised with two loving parents. I grew up with a roof over my head, and now I'm at like a state college. So I can't really speak on the perspective of somebody that's actually living on the streets or living in the streets and just kind of being where all the violence and all the crime is. I just can't speak to that perspective. But what I can speak on is how hip hop has helped me, specifically 90s hip hop, throughout my high school years. Like, I was not necessarily antisocial, but I kept to myself a lot of the time. And I think that was because I was constantly looking for what was real, who was I authentically, who was I deep down. And hip hop really spoke to a lot of that. I'm thinking about Nas and Tupac and talking about what's real. And then from there, I kind of traversed into Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole. That's probably why I talk about them so much on this channel, is just because, or this podcast, because they really help form my thinking and my mentality of just life in general. And then I start realizing a lot of the stuff that they're playing on the radio isn't helpful. Because when I was growing up, the radio that I would listen to was like either country or like pop radio, and we didn't really have a hip hop radio where I was growing up. So I just wasn't really able to have that experience either. And what I heard, the hip hop that I did hear on the radio, it wasn't promoting helpful messages at all. It was only promoting like party stuff, which is okay. There's a time and place for that, obviously. Like, we all like to party. We all like to have a good time, just let ourselves go a little bit. But there's not nearly as much thought-provoking and uplifting and educational content as there was in the 90s. And that was just from my perspective that, again, I wasn't even listening to like Funk Flex or like a bunch of these other radio shows that are hip-hop specific that are in New York and Atlanta and Seattle and LA and Detroit and like all these other big cities. And I was just talking with my friend like today, we were just talking about how drill hip hop specifically in what he's seeing, because he lives in New York, and just talking about how those messages just are not helpful at all, and they're not challenging the minds of the youth, and they're just keeping them down, they're keeping them trapped. And because they see all these things on social media, like all these people flashing like cars and designer clothes, and that's where they want to spend all their money too. But they don't want to spend their money on courses or books that give them a skill and challenge their thinking. They just want to focus on what they're seeing, because it's basically monkey see, monkey do. I mean, that's not specific. Monkey see, monkey do isn't specific to them. It's like with anybody. We're social animals. Like, if we see something of value that is in our community, we want to pursue that. I mean, it's the same, like, you're the sum of the five people that you hang out with. It's the same thing. So who can blame them for seeing these things that people are flashing and wanting to have the same thing? And that's where kind of the whole idea of the MC is so important. And having a thought behind the messages that you promote, because if you're only promoting violence and negativity and sex, drugs, guns, whatever, then you're going to see more of that in your community. But if you're talking about much more uplifting things, which are, unfortunately, I've heard, like, people just get clowned on for, but we definitely need more of that. And if you don't know of any accounts on social media to go follow Gary Vee. He's all about that. But anyway, the more you promote those messages, the more you're going to see that in your community, and the more they're going to manifest themselves in different ways that ultimately help the community at large. And specifically, you're an MC, you're an artist, you're a rapper. The way you mold your words together is unlike any other songwriter on earth. You have a way, and I'm a Christian, so this is what I believe. In the very beginning, God spoke the world into existence. And it also says we were made in his image. So if I believe that, then it makes sense that my words also have a similar power and are able to create things in front of me. So, and it's a pretty common theme. You don't have to look far. I mean, just go to like the whole manifesting thing. People like kind of visualizing and saying, I will do this, I will have this, because it ends up coming into fruition. But that's how powerful our words are. And if you know how to put your words together in a very effective way, like you're an MC, then your words are going to have that much more power. And so you need to be careful with them, and it's a responsibility. And that responsibility is to be the solution in your community and to try to help it, not hurt it, not try to make a buck off of it, but actually further the consciousness of the generation after. And that's where I think specifically producers, because I'm a producer, that's where I think producers kind of lose sight of the importance of what we do. I can only speak from my perspective as a producer. My goal is to elevate those artists that have a message that is helpful for the world at large, if not just the culture. Because the more we have of that, the more voices and the more marketing we have behind those voices that are actually trying to heal the world, then the more we're going to see healing in the world. And if you're an artist and you don't know what specific messages to talk about that are positive, this is a weird way of putting this, but you're kind of the opposite of a therapist. And let me explain what I mean. A therapist listens to understand and then give advice to their client. What an artist does, like a J. Cole, for example, or a Kendrick, what they do is they listen to their fan base, they listen to the stories of the people around them, the things that they've experienced, and then they tell their story back to their audience. But what that does, when you're able to tell somebody their story back to them using your own words, it fulfills the basic human need of wanting to feel understood. And I mean, that's why people listen to breakup songs, because I mean, it's not necessarily encouraging like, hey, cheer up. It's like, no, this sucks. I understand. So if you're able to help your audience feel understood in a way that is very creative and very effective and very potent, because you're an MC, like you're a lyrical master. If you're able to make them feel understood, but in a way that is encouraging, like, yeah, this really sucks now, but just wait, it'll get better. And this is how, and these are some of the thoughts that you need to have moving forward. If you need some inspiration, I'm thinking of a song right now. I'll just link it in the description. It's called Keep Your Head. It's a really old school underground sound that I've really only heard on a couple playlists on YouTube. But the hook is literally keep your head, don't lose your mind. I know life can be hard sometimes. Don't give up and just weather the storm. Just keep on. So, I mean, I think I got some of the words twisted, but it's literally saying like, yo, this is really tough. I know. But if you just stay with it, there's light at the end of the tunnel. And that's what I really think hip hop is missing. That's what I think it needs the most desperately right now. And that goes into actually another thought that I've had recently too, is it seems like more and more, I mean, it's obvious more and more people are becoming divided. And I have a theory about that too. So I have this theory about analog versus digital, and it's a huge argument in the producer space of like, what's better, like out of the box is the computer, out of the box, like hardware and actually turning physical knobs, or just in the box using plugins that have all these emulations and da 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 da. But I also see a mentality that goes along with each analog and digital. So what analog does is it captures the actual waveforms of sound, and it imprints them on a medium such as a vinyl cassette or a vinyl record, a cassette tape. And when you're recording to these mediums, you can't necessarily snap them into time like you can on a computer. You can't just, like, you can't snap the timing of the drummer right on beat because it's analog. You just don't have that control. But with digital, what it basically does is this is called a bit depth. It basically takes a snapshot of the waveform amplitude. So if you have the straight line is like this, and then the waveform is going around it like that, it basically takes a snapshot here, 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 and here. And if you're listening on Apple Music or Spotify, it's basically taking little moments of a waveform and reproducing that waveform. And then now it's gotten so good that it reproduces the waveform to the point that we can't hear the difference. The difference between the two is analog captures the actual sound wave, while digital just uses a series of ones and zeros to take snapshots of that waveform. And what I noticed with analog is you're going to have imperfection in that recording because you can't control everything. But with digital, you can, and it uses ones and zeros to make that happen. So with analog, it's much more of a flexible, kind of flowy, not as much control. It just is what it is. But with analog, it's this or that. It's 1 or a 0. There's no flexibility whatsoever. And I see that mentality of I didn't experience like 50 years ago because I can't, I wasn't alive, so I can't speak to that. But from what I'm seeing now, the binary mentality that is propagated through social media, which is it's a digital platform, it's using ones and zeros to create messages so we can see. It's kind of creating the same digital mindset of it's either 1 or 0. You agree with me or you don't. You're this party or that party. The dichotomy goes on and on. So if we're just going to keep up that mentality, it's going to divide us even farther. And that's where lyricists need to come in and say, yo, this is wrong. We need to start solving these issues. That's where I think hip hop as a culture, we need to get back together, not let these devices control our division, and get back to what's really important. And that's bringing the culture together, having those hard discussions that we need to have so people aren't just bickering back and forth on social media and not having any context as to what one person knows and the other person doesn't. I mean, that's literally what happened at the very start of hip hop before even DJ Kool Herc entered the scene. It was the death of Black Benji in the Bronx. I think it was the Black Spades. There was one of the gang leaders got all the gangs in the area together, and they had some really, really tough discussions about what to do. And they decided to work on the peace of the community. And that's what I think hip hop's roots is in. That's why I fell in love with it, because it challenged my thought and made me think, wow, hip hop really has the answers to a lot of these social issues. And if we were able to use those and get back to our roots, we would see a lot of change just in society at large. That's kind of my rant. That's what I think hip hop has the potential for. I hope that this was encouraging and not discouraging. I know there's a lot of messages in hip hop right now that are very destructive and very discouraging. So I want to put this out and say, yo, let's get back together. Let's get back as a culture and just help each other out. So I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you not next week, but the week after. So peace.